Welcome to Craft of the Draft, another massive episode coming up for you. The Under-18s National Championships have concluded. We've both named a team of the champs, a couple of changes in those ones, but certainly plenty to unfold. Plus, Under-16s developmental carnival wrapped up, and there was plenty to take from that.
There was plenty to take from that. There were plenty of takeouts, plenty of players who announced themselves at the Vic Metro versus Vic Country game for the under-18s. And then, the under-16s heading up to the Gold Coast is always a great spectacle. Plus, we talked Port Adelaide and Richmond's potential draft plans in our AFL club-by-club draft analysis series.
Plus, if you want your fun footy content, you can head over to the Hit Out podcast. This week's episode, we talked about the talent pool and what that might look like when adding Tasmania, some off-contract players and what they might be valued, weekly awards, how the AFL's sitting at the moment. So plenty unpacked on this week. And if you want to get something a bit different, we spoke to Brandon Jack last week. That's live on Zero Hanger's YouTube channel. He talks all things time at Sydney Swans, Bloods, culture, mental health. A really great chat with Phoenix and Aiden, and be sure to like and subscribe. The Under-18s Carnival finished on the weekend. We already knew South Australia had claimed the title for and zip and did that quite quickly. But for the two Vic sides went head to head, and Vic Country with the win. So they finished their carnival on 2. Vic Metro finished their carnival on 2, but it was certainly a nice high note for the boys from regional Victoria, just given that the shakier start they probably had after that maiden win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the three major talking points out of the game were all Vic Country players. Yep. Mitch, Harry Dean really boosting his draft stocks. He proved why he was the best key defender, or is viewed as the best key defender in this pool. I think we already knew that, but he took another step in the right direction. He had 6 intercept possessions in the first quarter alone. Yep. That set a great foundation for the rest of his game. Willem Dersma, I think, staked a stronger claim to be pick 1 than anyone has this year with that game alone. We'll talk a bit more about that. And then Taylor Byrne played a draft me game with 5 goals as a small forward.
Yeah, the Dean performance, and you and I spoke after the game about who MVP might be, and it went to Willem Dersma, but Harry Dean had every right to probably have the same title. And when we spoke about the Blues probably a month ago, we're talking about the situation that they're in with trying to get the points to not only get Harry Dean in the door, but Jack Ison, Ty Gresham as well, potentially.
Yep.
And at that point, we're talking about maybe a top 25 selection. At the moment, he's potentially top 10.
Fringe top 10. Well, when we did the mock draft last week, I talked about the fact that I considered putting a bid on for him in the top 10, and then he came out and produced what he did on the weekend. So absolutely sensational. And it wasn't just like the marking, the intercepting, but some of the ball use as well. Like he takes an intercept mark sort of 40 meters out from goal on the boundary line, then takes the corridor kick where there was no defenders at all that were covering the corridor. Yep. So if that kick isn't 100% perfect, gets turned over, goal back the other way, but backs himself and has every reason to with the way he uses it.
Yeah, it's just one of those performances. I don't think he put a foot wrong. Finished it East Carnival, which had been a really strong carnival to that point as well, on a high note. For Willem Dersma, what I think a lot of fans of his were hoping to see, a bit of midfield time at that level when the cream of the crop rises to the top. He started, shared his role between the back line and midfield and looked comfortable at both, and even got forward and kicked a goal. And it was just a really nice all-round performance from a player who's rated as a utility. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think when you look at that performance with the backdrop of him knowing that that's probably his final performance at a level above Coates League level this year. So he's played 6 games when you include the AFL Academy games as well. And I think in every single one, fans of the draft and draft nuffies have hoped to see him unleashed in the midfield. He finally gets that opportunity in that last game, but would have known that if he didn't perform, then that's probably going to be something that's going to stick with him for the rest of the year. Yeah. Like, yes, he can do it at Gippsland level, but we never saw him do it at national champs. Instead, in the last game, he comes out and was absolutely scintillating. And I don't know, like, I think you're better off going through the list of what he didn't show rather than what he did show, because it'd be a shorter list. That's how balanced a performance it was. He did his intercepting, his marking was really good, his contested ball winning, his defensive running. And like you said, he kicked that. It wasn't a clutch goal because Vic Country led by a fair way, but it was still a really impressive goal. So there's the balance for Gippsland Power now going forward for the rest of the season, wanting to show what he could do in his first couple of years of his career. But I think he's certainly proven that down the line, he's got all the capabilities and tricks to be a midfielder, and answered the questions that surrounded him coming into the year wholly at the highest level he could.
Certainly so. The third talking point you mentioned, Taylor Byrne, 5 goals against Vic Metro. He was a a later inclusion for the country squad after missing that win over WA.
An injury, missing it through an injury.
And
well.
then obviously didn't want to go through a whole carnival without winning a game for Vic Country, and he put on quite a performance in the front half. Just seemed like he was everywhere.
Yeah.
Every part of every score that Vic Country had, he seemed to either be on the end of it or certainly a part of it. In those scoring chains, and that was a really nice performance to wrap up his 3-game carnival.
Yeah, 10 score involvements from 13 disposals probably underlines that point. So 5 goals, that prototypical small forward, front and center, but also leads up at the ball carrier really well, so can get quite high up the field and have quite an impact there, and plays quite a bit taller than he is. If there was perhaps a question mark about him coming into champs, or that was always going to surround him, it was his height, because he is small, but he plays taller than he is and has plenty of X factor about him as well, quite strong, and just has that natural witty forward craft.
Yeah, well, he had 7 marks. And when you talk about, his
and
work,
3 contested marks.
Yeah, his work rate in the front half reminded me a lot of Dylan Moore, and how hard he works to try and get and create open space in his front half, whether that's for a leading tall forward or to get the ball himself. So that's what he reminded me of, particularly in Sunday's performance. So that was a really big tick for Taylor Byrne.
And such a tough player as well in the contest. Good contested ball winner, and had a huge preseason at Rebels level, and it's translated seamlessly. From a Vic Metro point of view, Jack Dalton led all comers. I thought his best performance of the season. We know that his running power is his one wood, but got some time in the midfield and absolutely made the most of it. Very, very balanced when he got the footy. I thought he used it quite effectively, and clearly his defensive work was underlined by the 10 tackles, but it just felt like he was getting back to help in D50 quite regularly as well, and then also involved in plenty of scores. There would have been a fair few intercept possessions among his disposal tally too. So a really impressive performance after missing the first half of the season, the first couple of champs games. It was probably critical for him to come in and show what he did, and he did it with aplomb. Yeah,
that was like you said, it was exactly what he would have been after, to finish up his champs and just be that reminder of what he's been able to do at the Coates Talent League level, and then really show he can take that step. I'm actually trying to do a bit of maths at the moment, trying to figure out how many touches Hassan Al-Ashkar had for the champs, and how many of them were score involvements, because it seemed like we talked about with Taylor Byrne, he was just such a creative force in the front half and a part of just about every score. So I should have done this before the show.
Yeah, no, but that's fine. But I think that actually adds another element of significance to the performance of Harry Dean, because the Vic Metro small forward line that was so dangerous during their 2 wins was as dangerous as it was when it obviously got to ground level. So Harry Dean taking those intercept marks and actually being pretty good when the ball hit the deck too, prevented your likes of Lockie Doveston had some dangerous moments, but prevented Doveston, Ty Gresham and Hassan Al-Ashkars from really getting off the chain too much. So yeah, that highlights the importance of that aerial game. I think the Vic Metro defenders, you talk about Harry Dean from a Vic Country defender point of view, but there were 3 defenders in particular that really impressed me. Kai Finch's game I was really high on. It felt like everything he was involved with, there was an element of class to it, and reads the game so well, has that spring to him, but sees it early and then is able to sort of take the game on through the corridor. And then Xavier Taylor and Max Kondojanis finished a carnival that certainly enhanced their stocks. Xavier Taylor, first round contention, and Max Kondojanis enters the carnival as a player. It's probably a little bit unknown where he sat coming in, but I thought he hardly put a foot wrong.
Yeah, back on Kai Fincher, really, I think he had a good bookend for his champs. The first game wasn't obviously the greatest for Vic Metro, going down to South Australia in those tough conditions, but he got off on the right foot, and then he certainly finished on one as well, so that was strong. Ollie Greaves with the MVP, and I've just got that maths done. Of Hassan Al-Ashkar's 42 touches, 27 were scores. I think I've done that right. I've just had to do it on the run. There's no one page to get them all there, but that's a ridiculous ratio. For a player, who was certainly quite lively, and Adam Swade on the weekend.
So Ollie Greaves and Willem Dersma, the 2 best mates, get the MVP. So that's a really nice sort of touch and storyline. But we'll move on to our teams of the championships. Obviously, the All Australians, the one you want to be in, that'll get announced this week. But I'll run through my backline, then you run through your backline.
Do your back 6. Yeah, sounds good.
So my backline: Lockie Carmichael, Xavier Taylor, Max Kondojanis at halfback, Willem Dersma, Harry Dean, and Dylan Patterson. I've got a defender on the bench as well.
Okay. Who's that on your bench?
I've got Josh Lindsay and Jacob Farrow on my bench.
Okay. Not far off.
Yep.
Same back six, except for Max Kondo-Giannis. I've actually got Jacob Farrow starting.
Yep.
And then I've got Josh Lindsay on the back. So I've got Dersma, Dean, and Patterson off my last line, and then Farrow, Taylor, and Chamberlain off my half-back line. So not too different at all. Do you want to give me your forward six? We'll go through the midfielders maybe.
After that, yeah. So forward six, Mitch Marsh, Aiden Schubert at half forward, Hugo Makunda. Didn't get a lot of the footy in any of the games, but I thought, really clinical throughout. Lockie Doverston, Tyron Armour at full forward, and Adam Swade. And then I had on my bench Jesse Muller as well.
Yeah, okay. There's a few different names. I definitely didn't have. I wanted Hugo Makunda. Didn't quite get him in. Armu's certainly a strong starter for a few of them as well. So I've got Cam Nairn. Yeah, the 7-goal performance wasn't just the one-off game.
No, it wasn't.
Finished with 9 from 4, but showed he could certainly be a key contributor.
He was the unluckiest to miss.
Aiden Schubert at centre half forward. Sam Cumming at half forward. Lockie Doverston and Hassan Al-Ashkar in the pockets, and Mitch Marsh at full forward for my forward line. And then I think the rest of my bench might be midfielders who can kind of play everywhere else. But who are your mids and your following line plus ruckman?
So Cooper Duff Titler's my ruck, Dan Annabelle and Ollie Greaves in the midfield. That's a formidable force. And then you've got Matt Leray, Harley Barker, and Dyson Sharp in that centre line. And then also got Kobe Coulson and Louis Callaway.
Pretty much the same. The Frobros on the wings, Annabelle, Greaves, and Sharp in the middle, CDT ruck, Coulson and Callaway on the bench. And I've got Fred Rodriguez on the bench. Still the MVP. Like, if I probably wanted to put Makunda in there, he might have been the one to make way, but I thought some extra WA representation might have been warranted. So similar teams, but some changes as well. So always nice to know that different thinking, but also some similar thinking as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We'll move on from that to the Under-16s National Championships. The Development Championships concluded last week on the Gold Coast. It's always a great week in the AFL Talent Pathway landscape, and there were plenty of players that put their names forward. We put a list out on Instagram on Tuesday night, which got plenty of traction. So we'll go through all of those names, a little bit of quick fire. So name the name, and I'll sort of give a bit of a quick overview, and then a couple of little talking points at the bottom.
One name who's been on Crafted Roughs radar for the last few weeks, Jake Miller.
4 goals in Talent League debut and showed exactly what he could do at the Champs. His marking, his contested marks, his ability to lead up the ball, all very impressive. And one of those games, he did it on Harvey Chapman, who's also on this list. So that just shows how much class he's got. One of the very best key forwards to watch in 2027.
Promising WA ruckman Axel Walsh.
Yeah, if you want to know how good Axel Walsh is, just go and watch his first game of the Under-16s Champs in the rain. They're not conditions for tall players, but he's so classy overhead and so skillful with ball in hand as well. Number 1 pick contender for sure.
Tom Steinfort?
Tom Steinfort, a really big fan of his. He's out of Geelong's NGA. He's a key defender, has all the tricks that you'd want as well, and quite skillful as a user.
Another club-type prospect out of Vic Country, Louis Salopek.
Louis Salopek's first game was absolutely unbelievable, going up against Harper McCulloch, his Beaconsfield teammate for many years. But he's so beautifully balanced. He's actually got pretty good mark on him as well, and he's a beautiful user.
One of my favourites out of the Under-16s Champs and the Kevin Sheehan medalist, Baxter Schruck.
Baxter Schruck, wow. 4 goals from 45 to 55 metres he kicked in one of the games. Just a beautiful finisher. I'd say it's unprecedented, but we've seen Noah Hibbins-Hargreaves do it this year pretty regularly and last year. But so powerful, great clearance winner, great ball winner, has all the tricks you want. And he's as skillful as any in Vic Metro's lineup.
One of the names you mentioned before, Harper McCulloch.
Harper McCulloch does the defensive stuff as well as any. A great midfielder. When he gets the ball on the run, he looks really, really dangerous. And he's as brave as they come. I loved what he was able to do in a couple of the rain-affected games.
WA's MVP, James Artemis.
James Artemis' second game of the championships, really impressive. He's got that powerful, ability to burst away from clearance, and his kicking efficiency is really good as well. So if he gets the ball in the front half, he's usually going to hit a target. And his brother took out the Under-18s medal last year, and he did likewise for the 16s.
And the one of my favourites out of SA Zemus Pilot.
Brilliant. Another one who was absolutely outstanding in the first game for South Australia. He's got speed, he's got that athleticism, and he's so dangerous overhead as well. Clean, skilled player and can play any third of the ground.
One for Tassie to get excited about, Lucas Hazelwood.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any I prefer watching than Lucas Hazelwood this year. The 9 goals from 3 games. He's an electrifying small forward. He's got so much firepower and so dangerous at ground level.
Max Thompson, another one of my favourites coming out of Bendigo.
Yeah, much the same can be said about Max Thompson, a Vic Country player. He kicked the 5 goals in his first game for Vic Country and has that innate ability to find space inside 50. He's a good mark and, has lots of different avenues to goal, the Vic Country MVP. He has already gotten some exposure for Bendigo. I expect that to continue in the back end of the year.
Another Tassie boy, Sam Husband.
Yeah, just pure class is what he is. He's so clinical, he's strong, he's powerful. He's that prototype player that is coming into vogue in the modern game and has been highly rated for more than 12 months in Tasmania, and he's showing why.
Isaac Herald.
Yeah, I thought he was the best player from the Northern Territory. The ruck had plenty of very likeable moments, has a good leap on him. Hugo Tim's another Northern Territory player to watch out for. He was named the MVP, but just on Isaac Herald, actually an overager. So he's one to watch out for next year. Could be following in the footsteps of Taj Murray as a ruck to come out of the top end.
There you go. Big name coming up here. Kobe Buick, plenty of attention leading in. How did he perform to finish off?
Yeah, brilliantly. I loved his last game off half back. He's got that ball winning ability really naturally. He sees the game really early and always takes on the most direct route to goal. So that makes it very, very hard for opposition to defend, given how well he executes his skills and kicking in particular.
Max Gulliver.
Yeah, Max Gulliver. He's a smooth mover. He's someone who I really, really like. His first game in wet conditions down in Victoria really laid a platform for quite a strong championships and has those clean hands that I think came to the fore in that wet game.
Jaden Gourlay.
Yeah, probably a little bit of a wild card on the list. There were some names that missed, and Jaden Gourlay probably didn't. It was probably more of a moments championships from him, but I think he's a really high-end talent and his potential is scary. He spent some time on Zima's pilot against South Australia, and then in the last game, he was very, very effective. So he's a rebounder, a brilliant interceptor, and a brilliant user. So watch out for him as a natural defender going forward.
And SA's MVP and ruckman Hugo Semler.
Hugo Semler, yeah. Like you said, he's the ruck for South Australia, and his follow-up, his aggression around the ground really impressed me. He's able to and willing to apply that defensive pressure, use his size around contest and lay tackles.
Tavita Roden linked to both Essendon and Port Adelaide for 2027.
Yeah, Tavita Roden got the capability to obviously play on the outside, as we know, play off half back. But when he went into the midfield in that last game, I thought the best of him really came out because he's got that ability to burst away from stoppage and be really, really impressive when he's under pressure with ball in hand.
Yeah, kicked a nice goal on the run from through the middle of the field. I think it was the Friday game.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
the last game.
Harvey Chapman, another one out of SA.
Yeah, wow. I really like Harvey Chapman. A really good defender. He played on Jake Miller, and it's quite funny. Jake Miller kicked the 4 goals on him, but it still felt like they sort of split the chocolates. Jake Miller probably won't like me saying that, given he did kick the 4 goals, and I reckon he had 6 or 7 scoring shots. But no, Harvey Chapman, so competitive, really good one-on-one. He's got the ability when the ball's in the air to read it so much earlier than most. I think most key defenders often start as a forward, then go back, and it takes some time to learn that craft. He's got that all down pat. And the other bonus with him is he's not just a really good stopper, but he's got that ability to set the game up with his chiseling ball use. So yeah, massive fan of Harvey Chapman out of South Australia.
And last one in our little quick fire, Mustafa Darwish.
Mustafa Darwish, yeah, his last game really caught the attention. For me, his ability to get from in to out was really, really impressive. And I think he's one that Essendon fans shouldn't sleep on as a next generation academy prospect.
Yeah, if I had my 2 cents for just a couple of things in this one, Kobe Buick, loved the way he finished his game. I love how his ability to kind of flight that kick, like his ball drop, he can really just be quite variable. Nice drop, and can just float it over the top of the pack and find space. One of the boys you mentioned, Hugo Semler, great follow-up work as what you mentioned. Just being able to impact, similar to what we see with Tristan Sheridan, who's obviously with quite some size on him, but can really just make his presence known. And then Josh Jarrett, another one out of SA, trying to spearhead their forward line, had that nice burst to start the third quarter. I think it was on Friday's game as well, and kicked 3 goals in about 10 minutes, so a couple others there. But yeah, it's a very nice list, and it was a very enjoyable under 16s champs. What are some of the other talking points you want to get into before we move on?
Yeah, well, let's go through the best. Let's go through some of the best that aren't on the list, and then there's 2 talking points I want to just go over. But From each academy, I've got one name that I think we should just keep an eye on because there were no academy players that I did put on the list. From Sydney, Duke Martial Law really impressed me, particularly in their first game against GWS Giants Academy. Good Dukes, pardon the pun, but good overhead, presents well as a forward. And yeah, looking forward to seeing how his career sort of develops. From Brisbane, Jackson Bridge, quite similar to his older brother in terms of his rebound and his kicking out of half-back, and was probably the player that impressed me the most out of the Lions Academy. GWS have the French brothers. Cooper French is the half forward who, when he gets the ball in the forward 70 metres of the ground, it feels like a goal or a score is going to result because he connects really well and he hits a scoreboard. Chase French is the midfielder who gets to the outside and is really hard to stop. And then from Gold Coast, Jackson Frost, probably starved of opportunity, but a creative sort of small forward type to watch going forward. And then, yeah, I thought I'd put this segment in as well because the list did get so much traction. Some players who were right on the precipice. I think I wrote a list initially and it was about 27. I wanted to narrow it to 20. So, yeah, we'll go through a few more quick fire players who, yeah, right there or thereabouts and what impressed me about them.
So we got Ollie Boddenberg.
Yeah, he's an absolute beast from the Murray Bush Rangers. Great inside midfielder and as good a contested ball winning player as any.
Kyan Walters.
Yeah, it's funny to say that I think he's almost the best kick out of anyone I saw, given he didn't make the list. But yeah, his kicking out of the back half was absolutely brilliant. And yeah, he's that halfback prototype that you want with the way he sets the game up.
Angus Abanizio.
Yeah, one of his games, he had 24 possessions in the first half alone, which was absolutely unbelievable. But nah, he's really energetic. He's quite strong around the contest as well and cracks him really hard. He's clean with his hands, very clean below his knees. So yeah, I like what he's produced, and I think there's plenty more to come and a bright future for him. I think Angus Abanizio is actually the best one that didn't make the list.
Taj Garrett,
yeah, brilliant out of South Australia, meters gained, sort of a midfielder, and yeah, when the ball's sort of between the arcs, you want it in his hands because he'll get it into the forward 50 of the ground pretty quickly.
Lincoln Brand.
Yep, he's a taller type of player, rangy in some ways, but yeah, when he gets the ball on the outside, it's in dangerous hands with how well he uses it.
And Griffin Barker.
Yeah, Griffin Barker, Western Jets player, plenty of talent, great skill set.
And finish off Cohen Dent.
Yep, 208 centimetres already. So I think that tells you everything you need to know. His last game was meant to be up against Axel Walsh. Ended up sitting out with injury, though, did Axel Walsh. And yeah, dominated with his size and has a developing skill set as well out of Gippsland. Just some others. Tasmania's first draft is going to be these kids, hopefully, as long as everything goes to plan. We talked about Lucas Hazelwood. We talked about Sam Husband as that powerful prototype, as well as Max Gulliver. Just some other names I want to put on the record. Max Dawkins was one who really impressed me. Mason Whitney's got a lot of power. He's got the ability to go into the midfield as well. Benji Russell as a rebounding defender who sets up plenty of transition play was really, really good. He went through the midfield probably more so than as a defender, but yeah, it feels like if you're exiting your back half, he's someone that you want the ball in his hands. And then Max Fugslang is someone who, yeah, out of the back line, his creativity is really, really impressive, and he sets the game up with how hard he runs. Jake Beam's another player that was quite impressive.
Chase Oliver as well, 11 goals in his 3 games, and he had the 7 goals.
Absolutely.
3 in another, so that was good.
Yeah.
Also, Victoria's talent pool, you kind of wanted to address that a little bit.
Yeah, just touch on, I think there was a little bit of premature talk about a month ago that Victoria is in a bit of a poor predicament with the talent they're producing given the strength of this draft. But I think the under-16s National Championships, and I think what we've seen from some of the bottom ages and even the top ages that have announced themselves, proves that I don't think it's as big an issue as what some are making it out to be. You're going to have swings and roundabouts with every draft, and I think it's more to be celebrated that we're seeing more and more talent getting produced from other parts of the country rather than Victoria dropping away. So, yeah, in the end, both Vic Country and Vic Metro finished with 2-2 records, and I think the way they're developing players is still the envy of the country. So, yeah, I think we're in a good position if you're a Victorian. We'll move on to the next segment, though, a bit of a mailbag, because we did get plenty of feedback. Well, with a couple of things. We did a mock draft last week, and we put out a question on Instagram last night.
Yeah, we just, we always welcome the feedback. And like we said at the end of the last week's mock draft, we always want to hear what other
Yeah,
people would
absolutely.
do.
Yeah.
What we say isn't the be all and end all, and we always want to hear, especially, if we're talking about the Tigers, who the Tigers fans want to see in the yellow and black at the end of the year. Same for West Coast to pick one. Same with what Essendon will do. So we had a few questions there. We had a few questions as well off the back of the under 16s. And the list that you put together. So we might roll through some of these questions. First question is from Noah. I've got a sense you might know who this is as well. Who are the prospects for the Geelong Falcons for the next coming years?
Yeah, well, we'll start with the 2027 prospects. So, Tom Steinfort, as we talked about, as the key defender, and I talked about Kyan Walters too. I'll add another two names to the mix. Charlie Montebello really impressed me in his first game. Archie Blood is a developing tall and did some really impressive things as well. So, there's a couple more names. Ted Buchanan can probably get added to that list too. And then for next year, Darcy Harrington hasn't played yet, but when he returns, watch out because he's got plenty of talent. Noah Williams got the Vic Country game on the weekend, which was really good to see. Spent some time on the wing, and I think he's got plenty of vigour about him. And then Jack Pickett obviously leads the way as the tall forward.
Absolutely. Tropics, father-son's coming through next year's draft. I think we spoke a little bit last week about both Levi West and Sam Harris after their performances in the Coates Talent League's most recent round. And Harper Banfield, probably another one out in WA following Charlie. For West Coast and their father, Drew. Matt, who would be the number one pick right now? And I'm assuming that's for the under 16s. I'm pretty sure it was.
Axel Welsh, for me. Pretty hard to overlook what he did as a tall. Axel Welsh.
No better way if you're starting out an AFL list. Project Ruckman, who's very highly rated, who you can bank on in a few years' time, and you can get a ready-made prospect in. That is, very nice start on top of the potential talent Tasmania might come through with as part of their academy. James, surely Greaves and Sharp are top 10. So this is from our mock draft last week. We kind of spoke on Greaves a little bit, how he was probably the surprise slider. And they probably both are or could be valued as top 10 prospects in this draft. But I think given we were limited to a few match bids and there's just a few list needs more than anything, that was probably the reason why those two similarly built styled players missed out.
There's several reasons why this year I think you're going to have a power rankings that looks so different from what the draft actually looks like. Obviously, the compromised nature of the draft is one of them, but also if you end up having a lot of teams like Essendon might, like Richmond might, like West Coast might, having multiple picks inside that top 10, then you go, well, if none of those players need a big-bodied midfielder like Ollie Greaves or Dyson Sharp, then they end up falling not because people think that they're not top 10 talents necessarily, but if you don't need a big-bodied midfielder, you're not going to take a big-bodied midfielder. But having said that, Ollie Greaves should go in the top 10 on talent because really big fan of him, obviously the Metro MVP. Yeah,
as I mentioned, I think on last week, that Hawthorn pick was probably relying on a few other names who went quite early, and Greaves was among those in the mix that probably could have got picked up at that selection. Whether it's a club like Essendon looks at him, not sure. St Kilda, will they go for a bigger midfielder, suit the Ross Lyon system? So there's a bit to play out there. Speaking of the Saints, Toby Travalia, his younger brother Riley Travalia, played in the under-16s champs. Happy with him?
Yeah, I was. Very similar. So I think Toby Travalia with his run and dash, run and carry, his ball use, his ability in transition, his ability to set the game up. I think Riley Travalia's got many of the same traits. His last game was clearly his strongest when it's going forward. He gets involved in those score involvements and scoring chains. So he's got that ability to be that release kick out of the back half. He's got the composure, but then he's also got the ability to deliver it inside 50. So could probably have put him in that list of 26 or 27, in that list of 6 or 7 that just missed the 20. But very good.
Last one was just a take. It just says Taylor Byrne robbed.
Yeah, robbed of attention in the first half of the season, maybe, because he was been so good for GWV through the midfield in the forward line, and then good to see him translate it on the weekend as we talked about for Vic Country. So he'll go back and he'll get some time in the Rebels midfield to finish the season. Hopefully they play a couple of finals, and he can show what he can do when there's plenty on the line. Yeah, thanks to everyone else who messaged for our mailbag on Instagram. If we were going through every single one of them, would probably be finishing around draft night. So we might get back to some of those the next time around, or just keep an eye on the Craft the Draft's Instagram page. Weekend highlights, or I should say weekend highlight, because we have discussed a lot from the weekend so far. But as discussed, I think it was a week or two ago, Sturt vs Central over the weekend was always going to be must watch. And for the second time this year, it was decided by a single point. This time, Double Blues getting the win over Central Districts. And Dyson Sharp was playing seniors, no Harley Barker, so we didn't get to see that
Frobros match up, but some of the sample under 18s boys were among the standouts. Louis Callaway, Noel Roberts-Thompson, Matt Larray had a really strong game.
Matt Larray played through the midfield, so that was really good to see. We know his outside ability. When players get pigeonholed as wingers, that can sometimes hurt them. But to do what he did against such a strong outfit was good. Yeah,
Jet Darlitz as well, another one strong. Will Cameron kicked 3 goals. Ducky Cochran's second game back. Could have had a big day, kicked 1 goal 3 from 14 touches. So he's having... he's had quite a good bottom age season, and he's got a few more rounds to kind of add to that. Let's jump into our AFL club by club series. Next up on our list is Port Adelaide. Kind of an interesting one for them this year. They would like a first round pick. They don't have a first round pick given it's with Gold Coast. I think it would have been pick 8 or 9 overall. Maybe just before then, but it's they do hold selections 26, 44 and 62 overall, so only 728 points. Doesn't give them much hope for the draft. And also for trying to get Nazai Wanganeen-Miller out of St Kilda, which would obviously further deplete their draft hand further. But they do have some certain list needs. They couldn't quite go to the draft too much last year. They got Joe Berry in, and Jack Whitlock was a nice kind of second selection or third selection with Christian Moraes. So they got some nice pieces last year, but probably a few more that they can add while they're kind of entering this Josh Carr era. So there's a few list needs. What do you see as probably their biggest?
Tall at either end of the ground for me. Probably more for me a tall defender, but a tall forward just as much. If you're looking at tall defenders, then I think the obvious one that we always do is the players who are out of South Australia. So Elliot Duffield could be one to look at, but from a tall forwards point of view, I think that's where the players could sit in that pick 26 range. So look at players like a Liam Heatherton who could slip as a result of that injury. I know we've linked him to a few clubs, but for a club that does want a bargain key forward when you haven't played half the season and you probably got limited, what you've done so far has been limited. Like he didn't play all of last year. He's only played a little bit of this year. Then he is one that could end up slipping. So that's one to keep an eye on from a Port Adelaide point of view. Lockie Carpenter, another key defender that I think deserves a little bit more attention. He's one you I think mentioned a couple of weeks ago in another club's plans, and as those sides looking for that kind of mix. Key forwards are interesting. Like Mitch Georgiades is having a career best year, and that comes without Todd Marshall in the side. And then you probably factor in, what role will Whitlock play in that mix? Do they go for a different size? Like Taranamu I don't think would be an option just given undersized from a height point of view, but with what we've already got with Mitch Georgiades. Where I'd like to think, and what Whitlock did on the weekend was fantastic in stepping into a ruck role when Ivan Soldo goes down and showing he can do that. So they've got that ruck forward hybrid. They just want a pure forward, and Liam Heatherton's probably a nice pick. I think the thing is they need that 195 centimetre forward, and you talk about Mitch Georgiades. I think he'd be even better if he's a second forward rather than a first forward. So someone to ensure that they've given every chance to from that point of view. Their only real tied talent is potentially Ben Franco as a rookie option. Hard as nails. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree type of operator. They are, and so what they've been able to do the last few years is get those kids through the sample program at the very least, if they're not an AFL consideration, and still keep them at Alberton. I think small forwards, maybe another one. Zane Piker's a local. Taylor Burns one we've mentioned today, and kind of now obviously they've got quite a wide draft range, even though it's just the 3 picks. Outside of other than a club like Richmond, who we'll chat to in next part of our series. But I think there's a couple options there for them, and a couple more locals. Maybe a Jevon Philippou, if he's in that right range for the first pick. Whether he falls that far. They're not going to have. They might not have the biggest grasp on where Zach Butters is playing futures, but it's always good to have that next line of midfielders. Max Kondo-Giannis, I think I mentioned before, but they've got a couple of options there for their draft haul in what is probably going to be a quieter draft night for the Power than most years, but I guess they'll be pretty distracted if they do manage to land Nazai Wanganeen-Miller. Let's chat Richmond and their draft plans. This is certainly going to be fascinating for the Tigers off the back of last year's intake and where their list's at, the pieces they were able to add last year and what they may be overlooked and what they can look forward to this year. They have picks 2 and 3, and that's it. So 4,659 points from just 2 selections, but it is 2 of the first 3 selections. It might bump down to 3rd and 4, depending on West Coast's potential free agency compensation for Oscar Allen if he leaves. But
before we get into the players at the top they might get, they actually probably need some later picks to get Louis Callaway through the door, who, son of Duncan Callaway, has been one of South Australia's best performers for 2025.
Yeah, and is that sort of silky midfielder. You talked about how good he was in that game. I had him in my under-16s All-Australian team. The Sample under-18s game that I referenced there, Central District versus Sturt. He just performs at any level that he plays at, and a good ball user, has composure and toughness, and probably starts his career as a half forward, graduates into the midfield eventually. But for me, there's two glaring list needs from a Richmond point of view. They need a small forward and they need some outside run. So they've got Jacob Hopper, they've got Tim Taranto, they got Sam Lawler and Josh Smiley last year. So that big-bodied midfielder is covered for the next 2 or 3 years when you're looking at Tim Taranto and Jacob Hopper carrying the load as Richmond rebound. And then in the medium to longer term future, you'd have a lot of faith in Sam Lawler based on what we've seen. A bit of a shame we might not even get to see Josh Smiley this year as a result of those persistent injuries. But you'd back what you saw in under 18s and the list manager's decisions that he will come on. But what they probably lack to some degree is that outside run. So Taj Houghton, to me, will go into that midfield at some stage in his career and provide that firepower and spark. But he's more of your 10, 15 minute in the
Shea Bolton.
Yeah, exactly, in the midfield, and then is that front half firepower sort of a player. But in terms of more of your first receiver to complement the larger bodies, I think they do need that, because you look at a team like the Western Bulldogs, and I know the Western Bulldogs are currently 2 games outside the top 8, so it's probably not a good one to look at. But I think the way they've reinvented the midfield is the way more and more teams are going to look to do it. And a player that comes to mind if they were to get a medium or later selection is certainly that outside running sort of a player. So, I mean, I've referenced him in relation to a few clubs, but like a Blakewood, Sean Benier, if you went a bit later, and if you went a bit earlier, then you've clearly got your Willem Dersmers and your Sam Grills as options. So I think Dersmer and Grill, if you're going to hold on to the picks that they've got, but they also need a small forward, so one of a Lockie Doveston type, or if you're looking a bit later, then your Taylor Byrne or your Zane Piker or your Hudson Walker, who isn't getting enough attention as a West Australian.
Yeah, there's a few options for the Tigers. So when we did the mock draft last week, it was CDT pick 2 and Sam Grill at pick 3, who you mentioned. Yeah. But obviously when we factor in that second selection, a big part of West Coast draft plans is probably avoiding CDT for the fact that they only have that one selection, and then that was why you took him, given that Richmond do have some variability with 2 picks. So if West Coast have 2, they could take a Dersmer and a Duff Tytler. Yeah. And then that might leave Richmond with Sam Grill type, Josh Lindsay type. Yeah. There'll be a little bit for them to work with. But what do they do do they try and split that second selection? I think there was a couple of people in our mock draft comment section that said, wouldn't mind seeing the Tigers split that. Does a Lockie Doveston, is that he's going to be worth kind of that split in that third selection, which probably ends up being pick 4. They're trying to get 2 later picks. We know Gold Coast might be trying to move their way up the draft order somehow. So do they try and bank on those? They still need those later picks though. Yeah. You mentioned some of that run. Louis Callaway can certainly offer some of that, but what's the long-term plan for him? I think they don't want to be his number one role, or look at him as that type of role. So they definitely need to get a little bit creative in the trade space and get some later picks in for a bid, and then potentially topping up their list a bit further. But it's certainly going to be interesting to see how that'll unfold on top of who they take at picks 2 and 3.
Yeah, and I think you're right in terms of needing a ruck clearly to succeed Toby Nankervis at some point, but I think they need 3 players or 3 types of players, and I think that your small forward and your outside midfielder are just more pressing at this point.
Yeah, you can get a ruck.
You can get a ruck in other ways, whether that's via an SSP, whether that is via the mid-season draft or the rookie draft. Just to touch on the small forwards, so their current small forwards on the list. So you've got Taj Houghton, small forward at the moment, becomes a midfielder ish, as I sort of touched on. Jasper Algo, who they drafted last year, been promising, but he's more of a marking target. He's not your traditional front and centre forward. And then Seth Campbell they've got as well, but again, he's not your front and centre forward. He's more of your half forward who then sort of connects. So someone at the foot of packs, because they've got such brilliant aerial ability in the future, it looks like, with the way that Harry Armstrong, Jonty Falwell and Tom Sims will hopefully develop. They've invested a fair bit into them with last year, but you do need a player or 2 to apply pressure and ensure that Richmond are getting second looks at it if they're not taking the contested marks.
Yeah, well, they've certainly got bang for buck in Seth Campbell through some savvy recruiting. But as you mentioned, and then Ryan Mansell's probably another one in that front half. Yeah. But between both of those guys, they're both Tassie kids. And we've heard Seth speak about he's probably doesn't have that lure to go back to Tasmania, just given he wasn't exactly growing up around the corner from Hobart. He was 4 hours away in regional Tasmania. And then Ryan Mansell's another one who will be in that mix as a Tassie Devils target. So as well as they can hope that those kids stay, there's certainly that lure of Tassie, nonetheless, for Mansell more than Campbell, it seems. And yeah, I Lockie Doverston would be perfect, but they're in that awkward position where they don't have a pick late enough and their selections are too early, and if they want to trade into the draft, it's probably going to be a little too difficult given they don't have their second round selection that they gave to North Melbourne in that pick that got them pick 3, so that I'll pick 2 now it is. So there's going to be a little bit of a game for them to work out this draft, even though they've got 2 top picks.
Ultimately, I'd be looking at taking with your first pick one of those outside fleet of foot midfielders, and then splitting that second pick that they've got, which is currently pick 3, knowing that you can probably get back to a pick 8 to a pick 10, depending how Lockie Doverston finishes the season, mind you, as well, and get Lockie Doverston, and then also maybe get either a later pick to address another list need or help you match points for Louis Callaway. So that's the way I'd look at it from a Richmond point of view.
Yeah, so looking at like Essendon could be one. Like, Brett Scott's spoken a bit about how he's probably looking more to picks than players at the moment, but if they wanted to really get up the draft board, come draft night, if there's a prospect they liked at 3 overall, then 5 and 6 are there. Don't know if that's going to satisfy everyone in that trade, but there's a bit to work with a few clubs having multiple selections. We'll call it there. We'll wrap that up. Another massive episode, as we say every week. We've got a bit coming up over the next month. We'll have Saints and Swans, I think, in our next part of our series. Back to the Coates Talent League, and we might see some VFL footy in Victoria from some of these top talents, and then obviously the Sample Under 18s and Waffle Colts to come too. So plenty of football on the horizon.
Big APS game this weekend with Brighton playing Caulfield as well. There's always plenty of action in that one, and that'll be as stacked a school game as we'll see all year. So looking forward to that. But very good episode. 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds, a dose of 17-year-olds in there too. So appreciate you sticking around and watching. If you want your fix of AFL content, head over to zerohanger.com.au and stay up to date with everything draft related on Craft of the Draft on social media. Thanks for tuning in. That's all we've got time for.